Reborn, mother-in-law was dying. I didn't call the royal doctor. Let my husband's devotion save her. Play the full story in one go. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. The exciting story begins right now. Zhiwei. My mother has suddenly fallen ill with a severe condition. She's foaming at the mouth, and ordinary doctors are completely helpless. Hurry and take the Yin family crest to ask my father-in-law to intervene and summon court physician Chen from the Imperial Medical Academy to our residence to save her life. An urgent voice rang in my ear, and I suddenly opened my eyes to see Yan Qilin's face slightly contorted with anxiety. He was still wearing his court robes. He had clearly just rushed back from outside, and his forehead was covered in a fine sheen of sweat. He truly looked like a grieving son driven mad by worry. My fingernails dug deep into the palm of my hand. The excruciating pain served as a stark reminder that I had truly returned to the late autumn of the 13th year of the Jin era, to the very day Lady Yan suffered a stroke and became paralyzed. In my past life, it was also at this time that Yan Qilin rushed frantically into my courtyard, pressuring me to ask my father to intervene. My heart ached for him and his anxiety, and I was even more concerned about the bond between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. Braving the torrential rain of late autumn, I knelt outside the palace gates and pleaded desperately, and in the end, I managed to persuade Judge Chen to come. The old lady was saved, but I contracted a chronic illness from the cold that penetrated my body, making even childbearing a struggle. And what about my dear husband? He turned around and brought my cousin Lu Fufeng into the mansion, had that woman serve tea and water at the old lady's bedside, casually took all the credit for her diligent care, and in the end even trampled over my remains to take the position of mistress of the Marquis's mansion. Madam? Madam, what's wrong? Jing Shuang, my personal maid standing nearby, saw how pale I had become and hurried forward to support my arm, her eyes filled with alarm and concern. I suppressed the metallic taste of blood rising in my throat, let myself fall into Jing Shuang's arms, and began coughing violently, as if I were about to cough up my heart and lungs. Ahem. What did the Marquis say? Mother. What happened to her? I clutched the front of my robe with trembling hands, and tears welled up instantly, my face a picture of utter devastation. Yan Qilin furrowed his brow, a fleeting hint of irritation flashing in his eyes, but his tone remained urgent. Mother has had a stroke. Only Judge Chen's acupuncture skills can save her now. Hurry back to the Yin residence, don't waste any time. He's a master at calculating his moves. Isn't the deputy director of the Imperial Medical Academy someone who can't be easily persuaded? Aside from members of the imperial family, even high-ranking officials and nobles can't easily secure his services. The Marquis of Ningyuan's household is now nothing more than an empty shell. How could it possibly wield such immense influence? He intends to use the reputation of the Yin family, which has been held in high esteem for 100 years, to pave the way for Yan Qilin's reputation as a model of filial piety. Your Grace, as you know, Judge Chen is a favorite of Her Majesty the Empress Dowager. I gasped weakly, my voice faltering. Though my father is the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, he has never had any connections with the inner court. If we were to ask for his help without proper consideration, we might well incur the Empress Dowager's wrath. And besides... I took a sudden, deep breath, my eyes rolled back, and my body fell straight backward. Madam! Another maid, Lianqiu, who was very perceptive, immediately rushed over, crying out, Madam, please don't frighten your servant. You've already caught a cold and haven't been able to get out of bed these past few days. Now that you've heard the old lady is gravely ill, you're overwhelmed with worry. What are we to do? When Yan Qilin saw me looking half dead, his expression darkened completely. Of course, he didn't care whether I lived or died. He was just furious that I was of no use to him at this critical moment. Of all times, you had to get sick right now. Yan Qilin blurted out, his tone full of reproach. Upon hearing this, Jing Shuang's eyes filled with tears as she retorted, Your words, Your Grace, are truly disheartening. The lady works day and night to manage this vast Marquis' estate. She was still reviewing the ledgers last night, and today she has already taken 3 bowls of medicine. Now that the old lady is unwell, the lady, as her daughter-in-law, would give anything to take her place. How can you speak of her in such a way? Jing Shuang was skilled in martial arts and had a fiery temper. These words caused Yan Qilin's face to alternate between pale and crimson. He valued his reputation above all else and could not bear to be rebuked by a maid, so he was about to lose his temper on the spot. I slowly came to at just the right moment, grabbed Yan Qilin's sleeve, and looked at him with tears in my eyes. "Please calm down, Your Grace. It's all my fault for being so useless. But my mother is gravely ill, and there's simply no time to waste. Since we can't rely on outside help, we have no choice but to depend on Your Grace alone." Yan Qilin was taken aback. "On my own? I don't know anything about medicine, how could I possibly save him?" I struggled to sit up, looked at him earnestly, and said solemnly, "My lord, you're being foolish. Who in all of the capital doesn't know that you're renowned for your filial piety? In ancient times, there were the 24 examples of filial piety. Wang Xiang split the ice to save a carp, and Guizhu buried his son to save his mother. Wasn't each of their acts of filial devotion so profound that it moved heaven and earth, ultimately prompting the heavens to show mercy and perform a miracle?" Yan Qilin's expression shifted slightly, and a hint of hesitation flashed in his eyes. I continued to flatter him, tailoring every word and phrase to strike at his weak spot. "Now that your mother lies gravely ill, this is precisely the time to test the Marquis's filial piety. If your lordship were to personally tend to your mother's bedside, never leaving her side, praying for her well-being day and night, and even performing ancient rituals to beseech her recovery, such sincere devotion would surely be recognized by heaven. Then, not only would your mother be spared from misfortune, but your lordship's reputation for utmost filial piety would surely spread throughout the Four-Nine City, and even His Majesty the Emperor would come to view you in a new light." What did Yan Qilin care about most in his life? Nothing more than his glamorous facade and so-called reputation. He was, after all, an incompetent heir to a title who had always longed for the emperor's favor so he could secure a good position in the imperial court. Sure enough, upon hearing the phrases "a reputation for the utmost filial piety" and "the emperor's special favor," Yan Qilin's eyes lit up. You do have a point. Sincerity brings results. If I personally pray for her recovery and tend to her illness, perhaps mother really will pull through." He muttered to himself, as if he could already picture the glorious scene of being personally awarded a plaque inscribed "Filial Son" in the emperor's own handwriting. "That is exactly right," I said weakly, letting go of his hand and closing my eyes. "My body is truly failing me. If I were to go to mother's room, I fear I might pass my illness on to her. As for mother, I must rely entirely on your grace." By this point, Yan Qilin had already been completely swept off his feet by the promises I'd made. He had no time to worry about me. He immediately straightened his back and declared with righteous fervor, "You just stay here and get well. I'll take care of mother." As a man of 7 chi in height, I, Yan Qilin, vow to use my filial devotion to borrow years of life from heaven for her. Watching his back as he hurried away, I tugged at the corners of my mouth, revealing a cold smile. "Go on, go borrow some years from heaven. In your past life, you couldn't bear to suffer even the slightest hardship, trampling on my dignity to build your reputation for filial piety. In this life, I'm going to see just how long your filial devotion, which is said to shake heaven and earth and move even the spirits to tears, will last without me, your succor." "Jing Shuang, close the door," I said coldly, putting on a strong face. "Madam, are you feeling better?" Lian Qiu hurriedly brought her a cup of hot tea. I took the teacup, sipped it, and felt nothing but a sweet aftertaste following the bitterness on my lips and teeth. "Feeling unwell?" "I'm doing just fine. Pass on my message, the main courtyard is closed to visitors. As for the matriarch, whatever medicinal herbs she needs or whatever expenses arise, have the steward ask the Marquis. Since the Marquis wishes to fulfill his filial duties, we mustn't upstage him." The commotion at Showan Hall could be heard even from 2 courtyards away. Leaning against a large cushion on the daybed, I leisurely peeled the tangerine in my hand. Jing Shuang returned from gathering news outside, a smile suppressed at the corner of her mouth, and vividly imitated the sounds she'd heard there. "Madam, you didn't see the Marquis's expression. He looked as though he'd swallowed bitter gall. We've had 3 or 4 different doctors come from outside, and they all say the old lady's stroke has struck with great ferocity. Ordinary herbal remedies can only keep her clinging to life. Without the skilled hands of a physician from the Imperial Medical Academy to perform acupuncture, I'm afraid. Jing Shuang lowered her voice. I'm afraid we'll just have to leave it up to fate. I put the peeled orange segments into my mouth. Their sweet and sour juice overpowered the bitter taste of the medicine. Divine will? Since Yan Qilin had the audacity to claim he would move heaven with his filial piety, the heavens simply had to give him a chance to prove himself. How's things going over at Lianqiu's? I asked casually, wiping my hands with a handkerchief. Jing Shuang replied immediately, as you instructed. When Lianqiu went to the south of the city yesterday to buy medicine, she accidentally broke down in tears at the herbal shop. Now, nearly half the capital knows that our Marquis, in order to save his mother, has been kneeling in the courtyard day and night praying for blessings. He has even vowed to follow the example of the ancients and prolong his mother's life through the ultimate act of filial piety. Early this morning, several uncles from the Yan clan even made a special trip to visit him. They are currently seated in the main hall of Showan Hall. I smiled with satisfaction. The timing was right. It was time to add some firewood. I changed into an extremely plain moon-white tunic and skirt, loosely tied my long hair back with a single unadorned silver hairpin, and dusted my face with a thin layer of lead powder to make myself look even more gaunt. Supported by Jing Shuang, I made my way weakly toward Showan Hall. As soon as I reached the doorway, I heard the doctor's resigned sigh coming from inside. Your Excellency, distinguished gentlemen, it is not that this old man is not doing his best, but the lady's meridians are deeply blocked. There is, however, a folk remedy mentioned in ancient texts. It is said that for such a perilous condition, if one were to use the flesh and blood of a close relative as a medicinal catalyst and boil it into a broth, it might restore her consciousness. This is commonly known as sacrificing one's own flesh to save a loved one. As soon as the doctor finished speaking, the room fell instantly silent. I stopped in my tracks and, through the half-open carved wooden door, caught a glimpse of Yan Qilin frozen in place. His face, already puffy from staying up late, was now as white as paper, and a distinct flicker of hesitation and terror flashed in his eyes. Absurd! How could something so trivial be taken seriously? Yan Qilin suddenly raised his voice, trying to hide his inner panic. Seated in a grand armchair, the third uncle stroked his mustache and spoke slowly. Qilin, the doctor has merely suggested a prescription. However, our Yan family has indeed produced ancestors who demonstrated such profound filial piety that they cut a piece of their own thigh to treat a loved one, an act for which they were awarded a plaque by the late emperor. Now that you have publicly declared your intention to pray for your mother's well-being, if you were to perform this great act of kindness, you would surely go down in history. Those words undoubtedly put Yan Qilin in a tight spot. He was the kind of person who valued his life above all else yet craved the admiration of others. Seizing the moment, I clutched my chest and crossed the threshold, coughing violently. Ahem. My third great-uncle speaks the truth. I felt as if I were about to collapse at any moment, as though a single gust of wind could knock me over. Just yesterday, the Marquis wept at my bedside, saying he wished he could take my mother's punishment upon himself. Now that we have found a way to save my mother, the Marquis' sincere filial devotion has finally found a way to be put to good use. Yan Qilin suddenly turned and glared at me, his eyes as sharp as knives, his back teeth grinding audibly. With the lady so seriously ill, how could you just run off like this? He was warning me to shut up. Yet I pretended not to understand the look in his eyes. With tears welling in my eyes, I walked up to him, looked up at him, and spoke in a voice that was both sorrowful and filled with profound reverence. I deeply admire your Grace's noble sense of duty. If Mother knew that your Grace was willing to offer your own flesh as an ingredient for her medicine, she would surely survive this ordeal. Your Grace, please go in peace. Though I am frail and ill, I will certainly drag this broken body to the Buddha's altar and recite 300 sutras for you and Mother. Every word I spoke was steeped in righteousness. Upon hearing this, my third cousin uncle and several other elders nodded in unison, and their gazes toward Yan Qilin took on an air of both expectation and urgency. Qilin, since your wife is so reasonable, you mustn't hesitate. The old lady's illness cannot wait, said Uncle San, putting an end to the matter. Yan Qilin's back was already drenched in cold sweat. His fists were clenched tight, and the veins on his forehead were throbbing. With the room full of elders and doctors watching him, if he dared to say a single no, he would never be able to hold his head high in the capital for the rest of his life. Just then, a very faint sob came from behind the folding screen in the inner chamber. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of the hem of a lotus-pink skirt, embroidered with forsythia blossoms, flashing past the edge of the screen. It was Lu Fufeng. This distant cousin, who was staying at the Marquis's mansion, was now hiding in the shadows. Of course, she felt heartbroken that her lover, her cousin, was about to be stabbed, but she was an extremely clever and selfish woman. She knew full well that once Yan Qilin's reputation was ruined, the Marquis's household would be finished, and even if she were to become a member of the household in the future, she would gain not a single benefit. Therefore, even though her heart ached so much she felt she might tear her handkerchief to shreds, she dared not rush out to stop it. All she could do was watch helplessly as her lover endured this physical torment. "Gee. Get me a knife." Yan Qilin finally gritted his teeth and forced the words out through clenched jaws, his voice trembling uncontrollably. A servant quickly brought in a sharp dagger and a clean white porcelain bowl. As he lay dying, Yan Qi stared intently at the dagger, his chest heaving violently. He lifted the hem of his robe, exposing his thigh, and gripped the hilt, yet for a long time he dared not bring it down. "Your Excellency, please hurry. The medicine is already simmering on the stove. We're just waiting for the ingredient to be added," the doctor urged indifferently from the side. I lowered my head slightly and used my handkerchief to hide the mocking smile at the corner of my mouth. "Ah!" With a piercing scream, Yan Qilin closed his eyes and violently carved a piece of flesh the size of a copper coin from his thigh. Blood instantly stained his white underwear red, dripping in plops onto the expensive Persian rug. With a clang, the dagger fell to the floor. Yan Qilin collapsed into the armchair in pain, his face contorted, and even his breathing trembled. A deeply stifled cry came from behind the screen, followed immediately by the sound of a heavy object hitting the ground. It seemed that Lu Fufeng had fainted from the pain, yet he didn't even have the strength to call out for help. The Marquis is truly a most filial man. Uncle San clapped his hands in approval, and the physician quickly stepped forward to place the blood-stained piece of flesh into a bowl, which he then carried to the inner chambers to prepare the medicine. Seeing Yan Qilin in such a pitiful state, I took a step forward and said with concern, "Your Excellency, you're so badly injured, you should go back to your room and rest. The elders are watching over things here, and now that Mother has taken her medicine, she's sure to make a full recovery." Yan Qilin was deathly pale. He didn't even have the strength to look at me. Supported by 2 servants, he returned to his study in a most pitiful state. Half an hour later, the bowl of medicinal soup, which had been laced with a special ingredient, was forced down the old lady's throat. Everyone held their breath, waiting for a miracle to happen. However, half an incense stick's worth of time passed, then a whole incense stick's worth. Not only did the old lady on the bed fail to open her eyes, but she suddenly began convulsing all over. Black liquid spewed from the crooked corner of her mouth, and a strange, gurgling sound came from her throat. What's going on here?" Uncle San was utterly shocked. The doctor was so flustered that sweat poured down his face. He hurried forward to administer acupuncture to stabilize the patient's heartbeat, shaking his head repeatedly. "This shouldn't be happening. The ancient texts don't say it should be like this. Perhaps the Marquis's devotion isn't sincere enough?" As I listened to the doctor's evasive words, I stared coldly at my mother-in-law, who lay on the bed looking as pale as gold paper. Can common herbs and a piece of raw meat cure a severe stroke? That's utterly ridiculous. Yan Qilin took that blow for nothing. Not only did he suffer for nothing, but to make up for his lack of sincerity, he'll have to pay an even higher price. After the old lady coughed up black fluid, chaos erupted in the Showan Hall. The doctor scrambled to prescribe 2 doses of potent medicine, then, claiming his medical skills were inadequate, refused outright to stay any longer. He didn't even dare to ask for a consultation fee before fleeing the Marquis's mansion. When Yan Qilin, dragging his injured leg, from which flesh had just been cut away, hobbled in, supported by a servant, he saw the old lady lying there, her face ashen and barely breathing. His own face turned ashen, and he stared fixedly at the bed. His body swayed slightly. It was unclear whether this was due to the pain from his wound or the anguish of having his flesh cut away for nothing. How could this happen? Didn't they say that sacrificing one's own flesh and blood to save a loved one would move heaven? I, Yan Qilin, have even offered my own flesh and blood, why won't heaven open its eyes? He slammed his fist against the duobao pavilion, causing the porcelain on top to shake and teeter on the brink of falling. I stood to one side, covering my mouth with a handkerchief as I coughed weakly twice, then spoke softly to reassure him, "My lord, please do not worry. Although it is recorded in ancient texts, perhaps the time has not yet come, or perhaps..." I paused, my gaze sweeping toward the door, or perhaps our mortal eyes are simply unable to fathom the mysteries involved. No sooner had he finished speaking than a faint sound of footsteps came from outside the door. Lu Fufeng walked in, holding a bowl of ginseng soup, her eyes red-rimmed. Today she was dressed in a plain white blouse and skirt that made her look pitifully vulnerable, and the look in her eyes as she gazed at Yan Qilin was filled with undisguised concern. "Cousin, your leg is still injured, how can you get so angry?" She set down the ginseng soup in a soft, gentle voice, turned to look at the old lady, dabbed the corner of her eye with a handkerchief, and said in a lowered voice, "Aunt's illness has come about in a truly strange way. She was perfectly fine last night, how could she have collapsed today? The doctors in the capital are all at a loss, and despite your sincere efforts, cousin, there's been no sign of improvement." Fufeng dares to speculate. Perhaps this is not an ordinary illness, but rather the result of coming into contact with something impure? Upon hearing this, Yan Qilin's eyebrows twitched sharply. He had been reluctant to admit that his filial piety had been in vain, so when Lu Fufeng offered him a way out, he naturally seized the opportunity. Did he come into conflict with an evil spirit? Yan Qilin narrowed his eyes, as if he had grasped a lifeline. Lu Fufeng nodded, his eyes flickering. "I've heard that Master Lingshu of Qingyun Temple, just outside the city, is most skilled at exorcising evil spirits and healing the sick. That master possesses powers that reach from heaven to earth and can communicate with the gods. Since my cousin possesses such profound filial piety that it moves the heavens, if we could invite this master to our residence to perform a ritual and draw upon the power of the gods, we would surely be able to dispel the evil energy from my aunt." I sneered inwardly. Lu Fufeng was afraid that Yan Qilin would take another chunk of flesh from him, so he was desperately looking for a scapegoat. As for this Master Lingshu, he's nothing more than a charlatan preying on the martial arts world. But I put on a look of sudden realization and nodded in agreement, my cousin is absolutely right. After all, our medical skills as mere mortals are limited. If there really are evil spirits at work, we naturally need guidance from a master. Your Excellency, you have endured even the slightest pain for your mother's sake. Asking a Taoist master to perform a ritual is something you simply cannot refuse. Yan Qilin wholeheartedly agreed. He immediately ordered a carriage to be prepared and, bearing a generous gift, personally went out of the city to invite Master Lingshu. In less than half a day, the Taoist master was invited into the Marquis's mansion. He was dressed in a bagua robe of an indistinguishable color, holding a fly whisk, and exuding an air of otherworldly grace. He was followed by 4 young Taoist apprentices carrying a compass and a small wooden sword. Master Lingshu walked around the show and hall, putting on a show, as the needle of the compass in his hand spun wildly. Finally, with a grave expression, he formed a few hand seals and sighed, "Your Excellency, the old lady has been possessed by a 1,000-year-old vengeful spirit. That malevolent spirit harbors profound resentment. How could ordinary herbal remedies possibly cure a ghost? Only by performing a ritual supplemented by this humble monk's secret 9-transformation soul-restoring pill, can we expel this evil spirit." As soon as Yan Qilin heard this, he said anxiously, "As long as it can save my mother, master, just ask for whatever you need." Master Lingshu stroked his mustache and made an exorbitant demand. The altar for this ritual must be anchored at its center with a 7-star lamp forged from pure gold. The 9-transformation reincarnation pill must be brewed using the finest spiritual herbs, such as century-old ginseng and Tianshan snow lotus. More importantly, the aura of the S mansion has been tainted by evil energy, so all objects carrying malevolent energy must be sealed away. While this humble monk is performing the ritual, no one in the mansion may move about without permission, especially the female relatives with weak birth charts, to avoid offending the deities. It's like getting a pillow just when you're dozing off. I was just worried I wouldn't find a reason to wash my hands of this completely, but this scammer has laid it all out for me. I immediately took a step forward, leaning unsteadily against Jing Shuang, my face a mixture of fear and self-reproach. The master is right. I have been terribly ill these past few days, and I'm afraid my destiny is the weakest of all. If I were to disrupt the magical formation, wouldn't I become a sinner? I turned to look at Yan Qilin, my tone earnest. Your Excellency, for mother's sake, I should step aside. However, the expenses required for this ritual platform are truly enormous, and as I am unwell, I fear I will be unable to manage them. Why not hand over the household ledgers and the accounting tokens to your grace, so that you may have full authority to manage them? I shall return to the main courtyard immediately to seclude myself in spiritual practice, eating vegetarian meals and chanting Buddha's name every day until my mother has fully recovered. I will not set foot outside the courtyard gates even a half step. Yan Qilin was eager to prove himself, and seeing how considerate I was in handing over the reins of the household, he was even more pleased and agreed without hesitation. Back at the main courtyard, Jing Shuang locked the courtyard gate tightly. Lianqiu stepped forward, placed a long string of keys in my hand, and whispered, "Please rest assured, madam. As you instructed, yesterday I transferred all of the Yin family's dowry to the inner treasury and secured it with 3 large steel locks. There is now less than 200 taels of silver left in the public accounts." I ran my fingers over the cold bunch of keys with satisfaction. This Marquis Yan Qilin is nothing but a figurehead. All of the Marquisite's expenses over the years have been covered by my family's generous dowry. He's always taken this for granted and has never checked the accounts. Now he's holding that empty public ledger to satisfy that insatiable charlatan. I'm curious to see how he'll keep up this charade of being a filial son who moves heaven and earth without my silver. As night fell, flames shot skyward in the direction of Showan Hall. The sound of Taoist priests chanting sutras, the clinking of bells, and the wails and howls of ghosts during the ritual intertwined, turning the normally dignified and refined Yuan Marquis mansion into a chaotic scene. Listening to the commotion from over there, I lay peacefully on my bed, pulled the brocade quilt over me, and fell into a deep sleep. Early the next morning, I was awakened by the sound of someone pounding on the door. "Madam! Madam, please open the door. The Marquis is in a rage in the front courtyard and says he wants to see you," came the anxious shout of Uncle Wu, the steward of the Marquis's mansion, from outside. I rose slowly and methodically, allowing Jing Shuang to help me wash and change my clothes. I deliberately chose a plain, high-collared, short-sleeved blouse that had been washed until it was almost white. Without any makeup, I looked even more frail. "Go open the door. Don't let Uncle Wu break our gate," I said calmly. As soon as the courtyard gate opened, Uncle Wu rushed out to meet her, drenched in sweat, and began slapping his thigh in agitation. "Madam, you're finally here. The Marquis is waiting in the flower parlor. He looks very displeased. You'd better go see him right away." Supported by Jing Shuang, I made my way to the flower parlor, coughing all the way. Before I even entered the room, I heard Yan Qilin's furious roar. "You good for nothing! With a Marquis' estate this big, how is it possible that you can't even come up with 5,000 taels of silver? What are the accountants even doing? Please calm down, your lordship. I've really checked the accounts several times. There's truly less than 200 taels left in the accounts." The bookkeeper knelt on the ground, trembling uncontrollably. I stepped over the threshold and spoke in a soft, quiet voice. "What's the matter, Your Grace? Why are you so angry first thing in the morning? Has there been some change in Mother's condition?" Yan Qilin spun around abruptly, his eyes bloodshot. He had clearly not slept all night. His injured legs seemed to ache slightly from standing for so long, forcing him to hunch slightly. When he saw me, it was as if he'd found an outlet for his anger. He stormed over to me in a few strides and slammed an account book down at my feet. "Just look at what a fine job you've done managing this household. Master Lingshu said that the pure gold 7-star lamp and the ritual implements needed for the ceremony would cost at least 5,000 taels of silver. Yet why are the public accounts completely empty? Where have all the Marquis' revenues gone over the years? Have you been lining your own pockets? I quietly looked at the scattered ledgers on the ground, a hint of scorn flitting across my eyes. In my past life, he had also confronted me with such self-righteousness, as if the Yin family's money were naturally meant to fill the Yin family's bottomless pit. My eyes stung, and tears streamed down my face as I swayed on the verge of collapse. My lord, those words of yours are simply tearing my heart to pieces. I shook off Jing Shuang's support, knelt on the ground, looked up at him, and said in a heart-wrenching voice, "When your grace inherited the title, the old marquis had been bedridden for 3 years, and the family fortune was completely depleted. All these years, your grace has been cultivating connections with the powerful and influential. What single aspect of that hasn't required silver? The household's daily expenses, seasonal clothing, and the gifts exchanged for welcoming and seeing off guests, which of these has not been subsidized by this concubine using the Yin family's dowry? If your grace does not believe me, you are welcome to examine last year's old accounts. For the sake of this family, I have even mortgaged several shops from my dowry, yet now your grace accuses me of lining my own pockets." I was crying so hard that my breath was barely there, and I could hardly catch my breath. My tears took Yan Qilin by surprise. The anger on his face faded by more than half, replaced by a hint of embarrassment and awkwardness. He prided himself on his aloofness and never meddled in the day-to-day affairs of the household, so naturally he had no idea that his marquis' estate had long been operating at a deficit. "You. Get up first so we can talk." He reached out to pull me up, but I dodged his hand. "Since your grace suspects me, I would never dare to accept the position of housekeeper again. Since Master Ling Shu is so powerful, 5,000 taels of silver will surely ensure my mother's safety. Your grace, please find a way to raise the money quickly, do not let this opportunity slip away." I leaned weakly against Jing Shuang's chest, looking utterly disheartened. Yan Qilin was in a panic. Where on earth was he supposed to come up with 5,000 taels? Even borrowing 100 or 80 taels from the fair-weather friends he'd made over the years was a struggle, let alone such a huge sum as 5,000 taels? His eyes flickered, and his tone softened. "Zhiwei, I misunderstood you. But now mother's life hangs in the balance. The Taoist master said we must gather the silver for the ritual by noon today. Otherwise, if we miss the auspicious hour, not even a Deluo immortal could save her. Do you still have any jewelry or items in your dowry that can be sold for cash?" The cat's tail has finally been revealed. I sneered to myself over and over again. Use my dowry to save that wonderful mother-in-law who's been tormenting me, and to line the pockets of that con artist? In my dreams. I wiped away my tears, looking troubled. "Your grace, all that's left of my dowry are a few worthless pieces of jewelry." Well. I deliberately hesitated, as if about to speak, and let my gaze drift subtly toward the door. "What is it? Hurry up and tell me," Yan Qilin urged impatiently. Actually, there seemed to be a few rare treasures passed down from the Grand Matriarch still in Mother's private collection. I lowered my voice, feigning concern for the greater good. "I've heard there's a half-man-tall purple jade guanyin statue and a set of peacock feather head ornaments. If we pawned them, we'd get not just 5,000 taels, but maybe even 10,000. Yan Qilin gasped. The old lady's private collection was something she treasured more than her own life. Usually, not even he, her own son, was allowed to take a single look at it. Well, what if Mother wakes up and finds out? Yan Qilin hesitated slightly. I sighed softly and urged him earnestly, "My lord, you're being foolish. How could those lifeless objects be more important than your mother's life? Once your mother has recovered, you can always buy them back later. You resorted to this desperate measure only to save your mother. Is such filial devotion not far more precious than those cold, lifeless objects? If word gets out, people will only praise you for being willing to part with your family heirlooms for the lady's sake. That is a reputation worth more than all the gold in the world." A good reputation is priceless. This phrase hit Yan Qilin right where it hurt. The hesitation in his eyes was instantly replaced by fervor, and he slapped his thigh hard. "My wife is right. Even if I spend every last penny, I'll make it back. As long as mother wakes up, I'll gladly bear the shame of selling off our family's property. He turned and walked out, instructing Uncle Wu as he went, take a few strong servants and a sledgehammer to my mother's private storeroom. If you can't find the key, smash the door open for me. Watching his hurried figure walk away, I finally couldn't help but cover my mouth and let out a soft laugh. Smashed to pieces. That was a treasure the old lady had safeguarded her entire life, and now it had been smashed open and sold off by her own beloved son. When that old woman wakes up and finds out that her life savings were used by her son to pay off a con artist, who knows if she'll have another stroke from the shock. Not to mention, I remember there was a remarkable secret hidden inside that purple jade guanine statue. The sound of someone pounding on the door from the backyard of Showan Hall, dull and urgent, continued for a full half-hour. I sat on the Luohan bed by the window, leisurely pouring tea. Listening to the raucous commotion, I felt that even this fine Gushu purple bamboo shoot tea had gained an extra touch of richness. In my previous life, when my mother-in-law fell gravely ill, I was so desperate that I pawned two of my dowry's most prosperous shops overnight and paid a fortune to hire a retired master physician from the Imperial Medical Academy to perform acupuncture on her. After she recovered, however, she took Lu Fufeng, who had feigned a few sobs at her bedside, by the hand and told everyone she met that her cousin had prayed with such sincere devotion and was a good luck charm for the Marquis's household. Meanwhile I, the matriarch who had drained my personal savings, was left with nothing but a harsh reputation as greedy and vulgar, unfit for high society. Now that I've been given a second chance at life, I'm going to see if these blood relatives, who pride themselves on their loving mother and dutiful son relationship, can still get along so well when real money is on the line. Madam, word has come from the front that the old lady has woken up. Jing Xuan lifted the light gray curtain and hurried inside, her eyes sparkling with unbridled excitement. Master Ling Shu gave her a black pill, I don't know what it was made of, and the old lady actually opened her eyes. I set down my teacup and smoothed out the cuffs of my simple robe. Come on, let's go congratulate the old lady. As soon as he stepped into the main hall of Showan Hall, he was met by a strong, acrid odor, a mixture of cinnabar and incense ash. The room was filled with smoke, and Yan Qilin was kneeling by the bed, holding the old lady's hand and weeping with joy. Mother! You've finally woken up. All my hard work these past few days hasn't been in vain, even heaven itself has been moved by my filial devotion. With tears welling in his eyes and his voice choked with emotion, he made sure to bring his injured leg, wrapped in thick bandages and oozing blood, into the old lady's line of sight. The old lady had just had a close brush with death. Her face was still waxy and pale, and her eyes were cloudy. She struggled to move her eyes, glancing at Yan Qilin's leg and then at the room filled with yellow talismans. A dry, hoarse voice emerged from her throat, what's going on? Why is there a constant sound of banging coming from the direction of my private storeroom? She really is a shrewd one, even right after waking up, the first thing on her mind was still her meager life savings. As soon as Yan Qilin heard this, he stood up straight, a look of almost heroic pride appearing on his face. Mother, please do not blame me, it was I who ordered it to be broken into. You were struck by an evil spirit and were in grave danger, and the estate was facing a temporary cash flow crisis. In order to raise the 5,000 taels needed to purchase the ritual implements for the Taoist master, I had no choice but to take the bold step of having your private storeroom broken into. The old lady's hand froze suddenly. Her cloudy pupils dilated instantly, and her parched lips began to tremble. You ransacked my private storeroom? What did you take? Yan Qilin was completely oblivious. On the contrary, in an effort to demonstrate his all-or-nothing devotion to his mother, he boasted loudly, Don't worry, mother, I've only chosen a few items. That half-man-tall purple jade guanine statue and that set of imperial bestowed peacock feather headdresses, I've already instructed the steward to send them directly to the pawn shop in the western part of the city. How could material possessions possibly be as important as your health, mother? As long as you get well, I'd gladly bear the stigma of being a wastrel. What did you say? The old lady's eyes bulged as if she had heard a death curse. Her gaunt fingers clamped down on Yan Qilin's wrist so tightly that her fingernails nearly dug into his flesh. That purple jade guanine. Inside the pedestal. The old lady gasped for breath, her throat rattling like a bellows. Her face turned from yellow to green, then from green to a purplish red as she struggled to breathe. She tried desperately to sit up, but her body lay limp on the bed like a pile of mud. Hidden inside the base of that purple jade guanyin statue were the ledgers and deeds documenting the Marquis of Ningyuan's household's usury operations over the years, and even a few secret letters exchanged with officials from other regions. This was supposed to be her trump card, kept to save the Marquis's household or hold others over a barrel, but that fool actually took the entire statue, base and all, to a pawn shop where there were so many people around. Mother? Mother, what's wrong with you? Yan Qilin was startled by the old lady's hideous appearance and hurriedly turned to call out to the fraudulent Taoist priest, Master. Master, come quick and take a look, what's happening to my mother? Pfft. Before he could finish speaking, the old lady's chest heaved violently and a spurt of black blood sprayed straight onto Yan Qilin's face, the very face he took such pride in. Immediately afterward, her eyes rolled back, the corner of her mouth, already crooked, twisted even further, and her entire body convulsed twice violently before she fell completely unconscious. Mother! Yan Qilin didn't even have time to wipe the blood from his face. Terrified, he collapsed to the ground and scrambled over to check if she was still breathing. I stood in the shadows by the door, watching the spectacular dog-eat-dog showdown, a faint smile playing at the corners of my mouth. By now, the officials from the Ministry of Justice must have already raided the pawn shop and seized that purple jade guanyin statue, along with the surprise inside it. The old lady coughed up blood and fainted, and the room instantly descended into chaos. Mother! A doctor, quick, call a doctor. Yan Qilin's face was covered in blood. He didn't even have time to wipe it off as he let out a desperate scream. Seeing that things were taking a turn for the worse, Master Lingshu quietly grabbed his fly whisk and tried to slip out along the wall. I tilted my head slightly, and Jing Shuang immediately stepped forward, discreetly blocking the doorway as she said with a gentle smile, "Where are you going, Master? The old lady hasn't fully recovered yet, how can the ritual be left unfinished?" Ling Su let out two nervous laughs, cold sweat pouring down his forehead. The old lady has been struck by a vengeful spirit, it's too strong. I must go to the courtyard to set up a new altar. Your Grace. Trouble. Before he could finish making up his story, the butler, Uncle Wu, came rushing in from outside, practically tumbling. Because he was running so fast, he tripped over the threshold and fell hard onto the blue brick floor. Ignoring the pain, he crawled on all fours to Yan Qilin's feet. His face was deathly pale, and his voice was laced with a desperate sob. Yan Qilin was already in a foul mood, so he kicked old man Wu aside. What are you yelling about? Can't you see the old lady is on her deathbed? No, Your Grace. They were officials from Shuntian Prefecture and the Supreme Court. Uncle Wu was shaking like a leaf. The pawnshop owner saw how valuable the purple jade guanyin was and wanted to verify its authenticity, but he accidentally knocked the base loose. And from inside, a thick stack of ledgers detailing interest payments on loans fell out, along with several secret letters to officials in the south. As soon as those words were spoken, Yan Qilin's body jerked violently. He stumbled back 2 steps, knocking over the Wangwali rosewood chair behind him. Lending money at usurious rates? A letter from an official in the south? Yan Qilin muttered to himself, his eyes filled with disbelief. Although he was a leisurely marquis who paid little attention to worldly affairs, he was well aware of the laws of the dynasty. For families of noble birth to privately lend money at usurious rates was a grave crime of exploiting the common people. And just last month, several officials in the south had been exiled and their estates confiscated by the emperor for embezzling relief grain. Taken together, these 2 charges were enough to strip the Marquis of Ningyuan of his title, confiscate his estate, and have his entire family executed. It can't be. How could Mother have touched these things? Yan Qilin looked frantically at the elderly lady lying unconscious on the bed and finally understood why she had been so enraged that she had coughed up blood just moments ago. It was him. He was the one who, in order to raise the 5,000 taels of silver needed for the religious rites, personally delivered the death warrant from the S mansion to the Ministry of Justice. In my past life, my mother-in-law's secret lending of money at usurious rates nearly came to light when Yan Qilin got into trouble while away from home and needed a large sum of silver to settle the matter. My mother-in-law pressured me to use my dowry to cover the deficit, but I refused. She then used the housekeeper as a pawn to pin the blame entirely on me. Yan Qilin didn't hesitate to push me forward to take the fall. Had the Yin family not fought tooth and nail to protect me, I would have been exiled 3,000 li long ago. With this mess he's created, I'm curious to see how he'll clean it up himself. I hurried forward, covering my mouth with a handkerchief and feigning utter terror, as tears streamed down my face. Your Grace, what are we to do? The Supreme Court has always been impartial and incorruptible. If they investigate our household. As a mere woman, I truly don't know what to do. Yan Qilin looked at me as if clutching at a lifeline, his eyes filled with desperation. Zhiwei. You're the legitimate daughter of the Yun family. Your father-in-law has long enjoyed a reputation for integrity in the imperial court and has many disciples and old friends. Hurry and write a letter, ask your father-in-law to put in a good word with the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court and have this matter swept under the rug. Just say it was a servant who stole the item, it has nothing to do with the Marquis's mansion. I sneered inwardly. Even as death loomed, he was still thinking of exploiting the Xian family to preserve his wealth and prestige. My legs gave way, and I fell into Jing Shuang's arms, weeping so pitifully that it moved everyone. Your Grace, you're being so foolish. The entire mansion knows that I surrendered my pass and key to retreat into seclusion. That servant who was posing as the purple jade guanyin was also personally assigned by your lordship. Now that the culprit has been caught red-handed, if my father were to intercede on my behalf at this moment, not only would he fail to save the Marquis's household, but he would also be accused by the censors of shielding a criminal, thereby tarnishing the Yin family's century-old reputation. I looked up at his pale face and spoke with the utmost sincerity. Your lordship's unfailing filial piety, selling off your estate to pay for your mother's medical treatment, is truly a noble deed that would move heaven and earth. The Supreme Court of Justice will surely examine the matter with the utmost scrutiny and realize that you had absolutely no knowledge of the contents of the pedestal, won't they? Yan Qilin looked at the room filled with yellow talismans and his mother, who was still unconscious, and felt as if the world were spinning. The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court has arrived. Outside the courtyard, a resounding announcement rang out like a clap of thunder. Accompanied by the rhythmic clang of swords, officials from the Ministry of Justice strode in at a brisk pace and completely sealed off the gates of Shoan Hall. Yan Qilin's vision went black, his legs gave way, and he collapsed completely amid the scattered yellow talismans strewn across the floor. Qin, the Minister of the Supreme Court, stepped into the Shoan Hall with a stern expression, treading on the yellow paper scattered across the floor. Yan Qilin, the Marquis of Ningyuan, secretly lent money at usurious interest rates leading to a death, and is further suspected of secretly colluding with rebels in the southern frontier. The Emperor, enraged, has issued an edict stripping him of his title as Marquis of Ningyuan, confiscating his entire estate, exiling all male members of his household to Lingnan, and confiscating his female relatives to be sent to the Bureau of Music and Dance. Guards, arrest him. A cold iron chain clanked around Yan Qilin's neck. As if waking from a dream, he began to struggle violently, scrambling and crawling toward me as he clutched the hem of my skirt tightly. Zhiwei. Save me! My father-in-law is the Grand Tutor of the court, please plead with him on my behalf. I've been wrongly accused. I looked down at him quietly, my gaze devoid of any warmth. The Marquis is joking, I said, gently brushing his hand aside. I took a scroll bearing a red seal from my sleeve and tossed it before him. Just this morning, my father presented this irrefutable evidence in the Grand Hall to bring charges against the Marquis's household. The Emperor, whose insight is as sharp as a needle's point out of respect for the Yin family's loyalty and valor, has granted us a divorce by mutual consent. From this day forward, I have absolutely no connection whatsoever with the house of the Marquis of Ningyuan. A breach of loyalty? As he lay dying, Yan Qi stared intently at the document, his pupils trembling as if he had suddenly realized something. He suddenly pointed at me. It was you. You deliberately lured me into raiding the private treasury. You were the one who arranged for that Taoist priest, too. Yun Zhiwei, you have such a cruel heart. My lord, choose your words carefully. It was you who ordered the private storehouse to be ransacked, and you personally selected the pawn shop. I merely went with the flow and helped fulfill your filial devotion. I leaned in slightly and chuckled softly in a voice only he could hear. In our past life, when you and your mother drained me of my very life and cast me out as a scapegoat, did you ever imagine you'd end up like this today? Yan Qilin froze, his eyes widening in disbelief, as if he were staring at a malevolent ghost come to claim his life. Let me go! I'm the cousin of the Ho family, my surname isn't Yan. What right do you have to arrest me? A piercing cry rang out from outside the courtyard. Two constables dragged Lu Fufeng inside and tossed a loosely tied bundle onto the ground. Several gold hairpins and a few silver bills tumbled out. This woman took advantage of the commotion to steal the old lady's personal savings and tried to escape through the back door, but we caught her red-handed, the constable said with a cold smile. Yan Qilin looked at his cousin, who was usually as gentle as a lamb and always spoke of love as deep as the sea, but who now looked like a thieving, vulgar street woman. His eyes were filled with disbelief. Fufeng, you're actually going to abandon me and run for your life on your own? Seeing that her scheme had been exposed, Lu Fufeng decided to throw caution to the wind and let loose with a shrill tirade. Yan Qilin, you good for nothing. You can't even protect a marquis's mansion, yet you want to drag me down to Lingnan to suffer with you? I'm not carrying your child, I'm certainly not going to die with you. Yan Qilin was so enraged that his whole body shook, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. From her bed, the old lady, who had just been startled awake by the commotion, took in the entire scene. She heard the imperial edict ordering the confiscation of the family's property and her exile. She saw her most beloved biological son single-handedly destroy the Marquisite's century-old legacy. And she saw the true face of her dear niece, the very one she had always used to torment me, as she absconded with the money. Ugh. Ah. The old lady let out a rasping groan from her throat, like a broken bellows. Her eyes bulged, the corner of her mouth twisted completely to one side, drool flowed uncontrollably down her chin, and her lower body gave off a nauseating, urine-like stench. She stared intently at Yan Qilin, her eyes filled with venom and despair. She wanted to hit him, to curse him, but her entire body was completely paralyzed, she couldn't even move a single finger, and she was forced to remain fully conscious, feeling this endless pain and humiliation. I looked down from above at the mother and son collapsed on the ground, and felt that the pent-up frustration from 2 lifetimes, weighing heavily on my heart, finally vanished into thin air at that very moment. Take the criminal away! Magistrate Chen ordered. The piercing cries for mercy gradually faded into the distance. I turned around, pulled my cloak closer around me, and, supported by Jing Shuang, stepped steadily over the high threshold of Showen Hall. On the long street outside the home mansion, the Yun family's carriage had long been waiting there. The rising sun pierced through the clouds, casting a dazzling golden glow that illuminated the open road ahead. In this life, I have finally managed to escape this quagmire that devours people. That's the end of the story. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe, like, share, and comment. Thank you.